Welcome to the Business Law, Estate Planning, and Estates Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Business Law, Estate Planning, and Estates Podcast with attorney Thomas LaPorte. Thomas is the founder of LaPorte Law Group, PLLC, practicing in New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, with offices in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Andover, Massachusetts. With more than 30 years of experience, he helps individuals, families, and business owners protect their assets, plan for the future, and navigate estates and business matters with clarity. I'm Lisa Mosbey, your host, and today we're talking about governance risks and hidden liabilities that private companies often overlook, including internal controls, ownership disputes, regulatory exposure, cyber risks, and succession planning issues that can create major problems if they're not addressed early. Welcome, Thomas. This is a big cup to fill today. We have a lot of topics to cover.
It's true. I'm gonna have to check my notes along the way, but these topics are not the most exhilarating topics, but they become so if companies run into these issues. Then, of course, it's the problem du jour, I guess. So my goal is to highlight some of these problems that I have encountered and know about, and perhaps put some suggestions in folks' ears and minds as to how to prevent them or to reduce them.
I love your approach as we're going into this. Thomas, let's start with how does informal, owner-centric decision-making become a risk for private businesses?
Well, that's a good question, and it's often seen primarily in smaller companies. The person that created the company, created his or her baby, if you will. Good at building the business, but we can't be good at everything. As the business evolves, it encounters variables that might be better suited to be addressed by somebody else within the company. So owner-centric or one-person-centric or just a few people-centric type decision-making can lead to unchecked decisions. Those decisions might cause the business to run afoul of certain regulations, whether they relate to employees versus independent contractors, registration in different states. If the company operates in different states, can lead to accounting issues if the accounting isn't done according to, say, GAAP principles. So as the company matures, it can lead to not only regulatory problems, financial problems, but it could lead to problems with your employees or with regulating bodies and agencies within the states that you're operating, and sometimes with federal agencies like the Department of Labor, agencies that control retirement plans and whatnot.
And Thomas, what is a less visible financial risk in newer private companies?
Well, a less visible, some examples, a lot of small companies believe that some of these larger issues that they may see on the financial TV channels and radio channels don't apply to them. But if there's any sort of disclosures that are required, this Sarbanes-Oxley, there are financial disclosures required. And if you're raising money, even through private investors, there are blue sky laws that are controlled by the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. All of those apply to smaller companies too, not necessarily just publicly traded or MAGA 7 type companies or Fortune 500 companies. And again, we all start somewhere, but as the company hopefully grows, which is a good thing, it gets more scrutiny from watchful eyes, including the government. And also, you're paying taxes, and the IRS and the state taxing authorities want to make sure they're getting their quote unquote fair share. So your accounting has to be proper, your deductions have to be documented, things like that.
And we sometimes see the set it and forget it. How can set it and forget it formation and licensing create a serious future risk?
Yeah, setting and forgetting, that might be perhaps a good strategy if one's investing in a target date retirement fund, that's being managed by your financial advisor. But if you're in charge of the company laws change, regulations change. Uh, Sometimes there are control and supervision requirements, say in the field of architecture, for instance, in building. They change from time to time, and you're expected, you have constructive knowledge, even if one doesn't right now have actual knowledge of those changes. And if one runs afoul of compliance requirements and licensing requirements, reporting requirements, um, you may or may not be given a slap on the wrist. Oftentimes, you're not going to be excused the first time. You may be able to negotiate down with a tax advisor or a lawyer, which is going to cost you some money, but there'll be a penalty and there'll be consequences. And more importantly, uh, once sometimes, especially with taxing issues, once you've had a misstep, then the scrutiny, you're on a list. The scrutiny becomes more often in the future. So it's best to try to stay ahead of these things as much as possible with reviews, with good business legal counsel, with your tax advisors, and your insurance folks as well, to prevent getting bitten by those hidden risks.
Thomas, when I think of risks in private companies, I often think of the directors and the officers. Why do many private company directors and officers underestimate their personal liability risks?
I think it comes from some folks, a belief that, and they're smart people, business people who are successful are smart and likely are proud of themselves, rely upon themselves, but they also can sort of get this feeling, and they're unaware that they have fiduciary obligations, not just to themselves and the company, but to other shareholders, particularly minority shareholders. They have to use, they can use their best judgment in business, but it has to be fair and reasonable use of their judgment. They can use their discretion, but it can't be arbitrary and capricious. It can't be an abuse of that discretion. Directors and officers have obligations beyond just to themselves and to the company. They have obligations to fellow shareholders, minority shareholders, employees, as well as their business partners and their customers and clients.
I'm thinking of family owned businesses too. That's another one that falls into that privately held. How is ownership deadlock an unknown risk in new, closely held or family businesses?
Good point, and that's not uncommon, Lisa. And you're right. It occurs in primarily smaller or closely held businesses. Well, if there are two families that are involved in the business and they're disagreeing, they each own 50%. I know it's a very simplified example. Well, that creates deadlock, and the company can't move forward. And sometimes it results in, depending on the motivations of each owner or each family, it paralyzes the company. And if the company can't operate, well, that's going to impact very swiftly, by the way, your business partners, your vendors, your clients, consumers are going to get wind of that. That's easily preventable by some just fairly simple advanced planning and documenting the steps to avoid deadlock or a disagreement that can't be resolved absent these advanced planning provisions.
And oftentimes, employees feel that they sense the tension in the office space or in the workspace that they're in. Another one that comes to mind is, why is operating in the dark with inconsistent messaging a risk for private businesses?
And by the way, on the prior question, a way to avoid some of those deadlocks are simply to put in your operating agreement or standalone agreement a provision as to how to break that deadlock. There could be a third party that each person agrees to. That's going to make that deciding vote to break the deadlock. And directors and officers of companies really ought to look into directors and officers and insurance to cover their errors and omissions. And it's not just for the big companies. The next question you asked me was about operating in the dark, I believe, right, Lisa?
It is, yep, operating in the dark.
Internal and external incoherent messaging, I think, was part of the question as well. I'll give you an example. If there is a lack of standard operating procedures or protocols that the company, from rank and file employees up to management, are all aware of and operating pursuant to, if that's not in place, I'll give you an example. There could be sales folks out there, and they will say to a customer or a new customer, a potential customer they're trying to bring in, certain things that are really over promises that they don't have authority to do, or at least the company is not prepared to honor or don't want to honor. That creates friction not only with that salesperson, she may be very good at his or her job, may get frustrated and move on. Now you've lost a good revenue producer. And if the promise is something that has to be walked back, well, that's going to create problems with your client, and it's particularly magnified with a potential client that you're trying to win over in the initial stages of a relationship. So internal messaging has to be consistent with what is being portrayed external and outside the company.
I want to shift gears a little bit. What regulatory areas do newer private companies commonly underestimate?
I touched upon a few earlier. If companies are looking to raise capital, I see this with online companies, and they're not necessarily public. It's not an IPO or public offering. Well, you've got to comply with financial, most of them are federal laws, but there are state blue sky laws as to disclosures, safe harbor language to potential investors. Those investors have to be vetted to make sure they have at least $1 million, for instance. They have to be accredited investors. Other things aside from financial are, if the company is growing, putting in place a retirement plan, whether it's a SEP or simple or even a 401k. Well, there's requirements there that have to be complied with. So getting informed about that and having someone that they can call or go to just to touch base with, for instance, on these types of requirements from the invisible hand. Maybe that's not the market, but let's call it the government in this case, is a way to mitigate those risks.
I think of times when I've heard about big companies getting hacked or their client list gets out. Why are private businesses more vulnerable to cyber incidents and fraud?
Well, I'm not an IT expert, but I think one of the first answers is that the people that do this around the world full time, it's their job. And some of them are state actors, realize that the smaller companies, and let's face it, 85% of the companies in this country are small businesses. Well, these ne'er-do-wells are seeking to get access to bank accounts. I myself was a target. Good thing I saw for what it was, but I didn't see it for what it was right away. But I did in time, and they sought to get access to tens of thousands of dollars in a bank account of mine. And they do that because, again, I'm no criminal. I should watch CSI or some of those shows to learn more, but they do that because the smaller companies can't afford to have the protections in place that the larger companies must have. So I guess phishing scams, malware, those types of problems are ubiquitous and always changing. And I think the smallest of companies really ought to have someone on staff that is your go-to IT person that knows what products that can be purchased, whether it's online software or other systems. Or, I'm a small law firm. I've got an IT provider in this building, so it's great they can walk over, but they don't have to. They can remote in. And you've got to do that as a minimum to comply with your reasonable standard of care to protect financial information, client information. If you're in the medical business, compliance with HIPAA. So anyone starting out, whether they're creating a med spa or a tattoo parlor, all of which are represented, you got to have a good IT person who understands how to mitigate these risks and obtain patches from software companies like Microsoft to keep you moving and running. Because we all know that if your computers are shut down, you're shut down.
And it's not like you have to have that person on staff. There's fractional IT persons, there's contract employees, lots of options, isn't there? It's just if you're not paying attention and you don't actually have those conversations, you get surprised down the line when you might be held hostage by a digital hacker.
You're right. And, I like any vendor, like any service provider, like any product you buy, there's some that are better than others. So I would tell small businesses or even businesses, try to stay nimble. Don't sign long-term contracts with any IT provider. And you're right about the fractional IT providers, and they're out there as a sort of a hired gun. But try to stay nimble. Sign shorter term contracts, month-to-month contracts. They likely are not going to terminate you so long as you keep paying them. But if you find someone, and I would get second opinion. No, this is what my IT provider is doing. This is what they said. I've done that, and I have went from 2 longer term folks that I had referrals from other people. Oh yeah, he's good, but do they really know if they're good? And now I'm almost my 3rd one, and I know they're good because I've learned a little bit along the way in the last several years. So.
The beauty of new companies is we're constantly evolving. These are some great tips today. Thank you so much for bringing them to our attention. As we end, would you like to share how people can reach out to you, get in touch?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. I have a website, LaPorteLawGroup.net, and the contact information is on there. My phone number, my email address, and there's also a place if people want to book 15 minutes with me. I do not charge them for that, and we can get at least an initial handle on their question or issue, and I can either help them, or if I can't help them, I've been around for so long, I know people that can. So that's what I would tell folks if they'd like to run anything by me.
Wonderful. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Folks, that is it for today's episode of Business Law, Estate Planning, and Estates Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. We'll see you next time. Come on back.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.